Chapter 1. Halem. "I do not want you in the same room with that man," I ordered my wife, knowing full well she had no real choice in the matter. Still, the bitterness in my voice caused her to question her loyalty to her position within the World Council. I could read the response on her face even before she answered. "You know I must go. The council has been called and I face barring if I am absent without just cause. This is the way things are. Suspicions are not." She bit back the tail end of her sentence, letting me know she agreed with my position. It was just a matter of politics why she was committed to attend. Be that as it may, I still did not understand how the world's most powerful people could be subjected to such stringent rules. It was almost as if they were being kept in check by some unseen power lording over them behind some veil. This was not the first time I suspected something was afoot when an emergency vote was called into session. Disguising it as a gala only served to make my suspicions grow deeper. I bit my tongue as to what I really thought, knowing this conversation was heading to our attendance, regardless of any resistance on my part. Besides, nothing ever came from those suspicious thoughts except more heartache and stress on my part. Merida said it herself on many occasions. My worrying only brought me down. We held esteem within the community on Mars. One would think we had our grandfathers to thank for paving the way for our success, but it didn't come without a high cost to our family, or lack thereof. Merida and I had spent the last decade together, the arranged marriage a tool to generate a legacy for the families we left behind. The price of power came with a string of goodbyes to our past. The echoes of forgotten tomorrows still rang dimly in my heart, and there was nothing I could do about it except comply with the law and live another day. It was difficult to consider the consequences of rebutting my station, giving up what we gained, or how it might affect Merida's political career. The irony of powerless people in the highest seats of government was not lost on me. If I was an outsider, I might have laughed at it. But there was no smiling as the invisible noose tightened around our necks, forcing us into submission. Our lives hardly felt like our own. "Besides," she said, drawing my attention back to her, "the council still needs to secure the votes to move forward with the artificial atmosphere project. I'm afraid that despite my campaigning against it, they will get those votes. I have my reservations about the technology. What if it fails and there is nothing to protect us? I honestly don't want the future of our society to be confined to the dome, but it has served us well for more than 5 centuries. "Vote against it and move on," I said. "There's no reason to relent due to the pressure coming from the other side. Don't think the thought hasn't crossed my mind. I just know if there is a future on this planet, then we will lay the foundation for it tonight. I see the writing on the wall, regardless of my suspicions that someone on the council is getting paid to push this hard. Perhaps Tetram's involvement is just a means to an end, and not something sinister. At least I hope not. He is a snake and a fiend. I do not trust him." I spat the words like an afterthought as I looked at myself in the mirror, knotting the tie I wore with my uniform. Being a policeman in the Martian capital came with its own stressors, but at least I was able to wear a suit befitting my lineage. My father and my grandfather wore this uniform. It was the only tie I had to them now. The dark colors contrasted against the whitening of my hair, premature aging taking its own toll on my body. But Merida seemed to like the distinguished look of it. "At least I made her look younger," she would tease with a laugh. Merida looked at me with a coy smile, disarming me from my anger with her gorgeous gaze. You've only told me this for the last 9 years, but you no longer need to try and sell me on that fact. Besides, I imagine Tetram has more skeletons in his closet than either of us are truly aware of, she replied, as she placed her wedding band on her finger. The alloys of it were cast from earthen metal, passed down at least 2 centuries on my mother's side of the family. It was our something old to carry on the matrimonial tradition of years gone by. A fitting passing as Merida and I were forced to say goodbye to our families for the last time. Looking back, it felt much longer than a mere decade ago when we were wed. But a lot had changed during that time, and the tides were churning harder now, as more was being done to build this new world with a foundation of new ideas. I inhaled deeply, leaning to get a better image of my wife in the mirror's reflection. She still kept my attention more than any woman ever dared, and for that, I was truly thankful. To say the blessings of this life tended to keep me up at night was an understatement. Sometimes when I was alone, I could imagine the feeling of her skin cupped against my hands, the smell of her hair as it tickled my nose as we lay together at night. I hated those nights alone, but those thoughts were pleasant company. She said something that resonated with me. Imagine if someone discovered those skeletons, I said, half under my breath, but still audible enough for her to hear me from across the room. She looked up, but said nothing. I mean, I am a policeman, after all. The statement was more warning than coy acknowledgement. Unfortunately, my audience was not easily swayed. Merida moved closer to me, the smell of lavender lifting from her skin as the air rushed over her. And what would you do if you found those skeletons, Halem? Surely you don't think you can rise above your station and accuse a member of the World Council? Tetram may be a snake, but he is a well-hidden and deadly one. Perhaps it's best to keep our private illusions inside our bedroom, she suggested. It was evident that she was afraid of him, even if she did not want to admit it. That was perfectly fine. My intentions were not to make a fuss publicly. Truth be known, secrets worked best as silent killers. I wanted to tell her that if I dug anything up, then she was in a position to voice those accusations. But I knew what she would say. She didn't want to stir the pot any more than it already was. The council tended to hold grudges. I shrugged my shoulders as if to move on from the conversation, but her first questions still lingered in my mind, even after the discussion was closed. Whispered words behind my back all these years might have made me paranoid when it came to Tetram and his bold deviance, but paranoia was a confidant when it came to judging your enemies. What would I do if I found Tetram's secrets? To hell with exposing him. I would do the world a favor and remove him from office. Permanently. You're right. I'm sorry I even mentioned it. Don't be sorry, she replied, setting an earring into place as she gazed up at me. Be cautious. You speak out of turn before the wrong person, and there will be nothing I can do to make the backlash go away. We could lose everything. She was right. We were fortunate to marry at a time that the restrictions on people in office and public servants were not restricted. A mere 8 months later, and our lives would have been out of our control, arranged marriage or not. I'll keep quiet, just like I always do. I lowered my lips to her forehead and kissed her lightly. You better. I don't need another roadblock into passing future bills, all because you wanted to act out. It's bad enough women are minorities in office. Try being the woman with an unruly husband. It was hard to tell if she was joking, so I fought back a smirk as I placed the silver necklace around her neck I purchased on our anniversary. Merida spun on her heels, her dress billowing out around her ankles. "I'm not that unruly," I said, unable to keep it in. She giggled. "No, I suppose you aren't. But first impressions are hard to overcome. You know that more than most." My mind immediately thought back to our first formal outing after she was sworn in to the World Council. To say I overdid it with the alcohol would have been a harsh understatement. I was not the only one, but of course, a man of my station hardly deserved to enter the room according to many of the council's way of thinking. I was beneath them, and in many ways I was a blemish on my wife in their eyes. The standards for office shifted quickly, and despite the old blood still involved, the collective mindset leaned heavily towards the new ideas. It was only a matter of time before the balance completely shifted and all members of the council would be kept from having a family. All because some thought it created a weakness by which to manipulate your political enemies. Those who thought that way were the darkest kind of evil, in my opinion. "Are you ready?" I asked. "Yeah, let's get this over with," she said with a sigh. My thoughts exactly. "I have just one more thing," I said, letting my voice fall as I walked towards her nightstand and opened the drawer, pulling my sidearm out and placing it in the holster under my arm. "You know weapons aren't allowed." "An unarmed policeman is a useless policeman," I replied, adjusting my jacket to further conceal it. Her lips curled, just short of smiling. "You're nothing if not consistent," she chided. "You wouldn't want it any other way," I replied, taking her hand in mine as I escorted her from the room and towards what I expected to be the longest night of our lives.